Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our fourth virtual Plan for Jobs event. The title of today's event is Jobs for the Future, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by our all-star panel today, who are fascinating, innovative leaders in the UK, all of them. Now, they come from a range of exciting growth sectors, whether that's medicine, green energy, vertical farming, or indeed digital technology. So lots to hear from them. Now, as I think about this, my priority throughout the crisis has always been to protect as many people's jobs as possible. And now, thanks to 10 million vaccines doses being distributed, thanks in no large part to one of our panelists today, we can start to think about the future and make sure that our economy is future-proofed and we can take advantage of all the opportunities that are going to come our way. Our panelists today are all on the forefront of that journey, proving that there's so much resilience and creativity in amongst the UK. And I know you're going to be delighted to hear from them. So without further ado, let them all introduce themselves to you, starting with Yewande.
Thanks very much, Rishi, and hello to everybody. My name is Yewande Akinola, and I always like to introduce myself as an engineering designer and an innovator, as well as a dreamer. Right, my head is always in the clouds. Imagine what is possible and how we get the impossible to become possible. I've worked in projects all over the world, pretty much around the built environment. So think building stock, think airports, hotels, schools, offices, a lot of the spaces that we currently are not in at the moment, but they're very necessary to our experiences as human beings. And I've also worked on construction projects as well in the construction industry, designing buildings and really pushing an agenda for sustainable construction and sustainable infrastructure. I'm very interested in education. I sit on a few one university council. I'm a visiting professor at a University of Westminster. And I've recently picked up the Innovate UK ambassador role for clean growth and infrastructure. I'll pause there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Yewande. Excellent. Hopefully we'll be back in those offices at some point. Alistair, over to you.
Great. That's great. Thanks, Rishi. Look, I'm the Chief Executive of SSE. We're a green energy champion and one of the UK's leading developers of low carbon energy infrastructure. I think we're on the front line of the fight to decarbonise the economy. We're building the UK's green future. We're investing about £7.5 billion over the next 5 years, including last year starting the world's largest offshore wind farm off the coast of Yorkshire that the Prime Minister visited in December. We are creating thousands of jobs. Since the start of lockdown, we've probably created over 1,000 green jobs in this area, growing sectors like offshore wind, electricity networks, and new technologies like carbon capture and storage. I think it's a unique and exciting time to join SSE. We're partnering with government at COP26 in the UN Climate Change Summit in Glasgow. And so for those people who are passionate about climate change and interested in technologies and delivering new and different things, I think it's a great time to come and talk to us, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alistair. Professor Gilbert, over to you.
Hello, I'm Professor Sarah Gilbert from the University of Oxford. I work in vaccinology. And for many years, in fact, for the last 25 years, I've been working in early research of developing new vaccines. But in last year, we were really called on to put that into practice and quickly develop a vaccine against the novel coronavirus, which became known as SARS-CoV-2, and not only do the initial research work in my laboratory, but get it into manufacturing, get it into clinical trials, work with an increasingly large number of partners, in particular a partnership with AstraZeneca, who have taken on the large-scale manufacturing of this product, and working with clinical trial teams around the world to bring this vaccine to the point where it's licensed now in 50 countries and it's being used in very large quantities in the UK in particular, as well as in other countries. Now, we've been really pleased in the last year to see the UK vaccine manufacturing industry stepping up and being able to take on manufacturing of this product, responding very quickly. And in the future, I'd like to see much more growth for the vaccine manufacturing industry in the UK. There's a lot of expertise out there. We need to build on that, and we could be much more self-sufficient in producing vaccines in the future.
Brilliant. Well, Sarah, thank you. An entire country grateful to you and your team, and you're an inspiration to millions, including my two young daughters as well. Fantastic. Jamie, over to you.
Thanks, Rishi. Hi, everybody. My name is Jamie Burrows, and I'm the founder and CEO of Vertical Future. We're a London-based technology company focused on vertical farming, set up in 2016 with my wife, and we design, build, and license high-tech vertical farming systems in the UK and around the world. We're a team of 20, so still an SME. We're very much focused on building a better, safer future for food, i.e. improving food security in the UK, improving population health, and also highlighting the importance of UK manufacturing.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jamie. Anne?
Thank you, Chancellor, for inviting me to such a wonderful panel. I'm Anne Boden. I'm the CEO and founder of Starling Bank. In 2014, I decided to quit my job in a traditional bank to start a new bank that's going to be built on wonderful technology. And yes, we now have 2 million customers, 300,000 small businesses bank with us, and we have more than 1,000 people working in London, Southampton, and Cardiff. But we're at the centre of the fintech industry in the UK. And as you know, fintech is a very, very important to the UK, and we are leading the world. And we have lots and lots of opportunities to do really interesting things at Starling. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Brilliant. Thanks, Anne. And as you know, a Southampton person, always happy to hear pro-Southampton stuff. So that's great. Sharmadean.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name's Sharmadean Reid. I am the founder of an early stage tech company called Beautystack. We are a marketplace for women-to-women services. We really started being focused on beauty, but we've seen a lot of incredible resilience and pivoting with women training to be coaches and business support and accounting support and selling their services on our platform. So we've got over 1,000 female professionals on our site. Obviously, this last year, it's been very hard because we are in the beauty industry and, you know, unable to operate, but we stay focused on what the future holds. So yeah, we're very, you know, our vision is really about how we can economically empower women through starting their own businesses and selling their own services. That is our company vision.
Brilliant. And that is a very virtuous one, which I think we can all support, Sharmadean. So I'm sure, like me, everyone watching is incredibly energized just listening to our fantastic panelists. The questions are coming in. I should have said at the beginning, but you are all well trained by now. So please send them in, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you are, and they will pop up here, and I will try and get them to our panelists. Who I know you're keen to hear from. So I'll ask all our panelists to try and keep their answers brief so we can hear from as many of them as many times as possible. And let's get cracking. So first question that's come in, which I think would be great for all of you to give a very quick answer to, is what advice would you give to someone looking to move into your industry? All right, Anne, go for it, and then we'll wrap around.
Okay, not everybody can work for Starling Bank, but you can work for finance organizations, tech companies. You can start picking up some of the skills and then remain curious. Actually listen to what customers want and see if you can find a way into some of the new organizations. There's a lot of exciting things going on here. Actually sort of seek them out.
Fantastic. Curiosity. Okay. Jamie.
I'd say, vertical farming and food is an incredibly high growth industry, and there are opportunities both on the technology side and also on obviously the growing side as well. So I'd say for people looking to get into the industry, shop around. There are a lot of different opportunities, not just in London, but across the UK in many different areas, from graduate and entry level jobs in plant science through to horticulture, through to software engineering and technology. And it's a very broad sector, and it's growing very rapidly.
Fantastic. Professor Gilbert?
Do please call me Sarah. I feel like the odd one out. Vaccine research and development and manufacturing is also a very, very broad field. And I think there's something for everybody in it. It's all about trying to protect the health of people, trying to help people. So, if you have any altruistic notion, maybe this is something that you might be interested in. But we have lots of different roles. So in vaccine manufacturing, there are engineers, there are people who are doing testing of vaccines, applying very close scrutiny to every batch that goes out the door to make sure it's exactly what it should be. But in research centres, in clinical trial units, we have people with a medical background, a nursing background. We have people who work only with data, the biostatisticians who just bring in all the numbers and analyse them and work out exactly what the vaccine's doing. But at the other end of the scale, we also have people who organise the vaccine clinics and talk to the volunteers who are coming forward and help them find the right way to contribute to the studies. So whatever your focus is, whatever your skills are, if you're interested in vaccine manufacturing and vaccine research and development, there's something in it for you.
Brilliant, thank you. And I can certainly attest to what you're saying, Sarah, just sitting where we sit in government, the end to end, from you coming up with a vaccine in the lab with your team to the God knows how many steps we go through sitting around the cabinet table to getting it into someone's arm that's happening at a rapid rate, that we're going through all those steps. And I can see what you're saying, that there's just a huge ecosystem in making that happen. So there's a lot of variety in there for people. All right, next, Sharmadean.
So for anyone who wants to get into technology, sometimes you might think that if you didn't study a STEM subject, that you don't have a role. And I feel like a quite discomfort with this rhetoric, because actually people who study humanities, the arts, philosophy, creative subjects are all absolutely critical to making a startup function. You have to have strong brand, strong design thinking. So human-centered design, be able to ask questions. There is such a wealth of roles in startups. And I think that if you're interested in being part of the future, because technology will permeate every part of our business future, you should look at, where your skill set may be useful, even if it's not STEM. Although we've had a brilliant push for STEM, and I'm so happy to see so many amazing STEM women on the panel. Don't feel left out or excluded if you haven't studied a STEM subject.
That's incredibly important and relevant advice. Thank you. Alistair.
Yeah, look, moving to our industry, I think the first thing I'd say is they've made a great choice. The sector's at the heart of the fight against climate change. And I think it's going to provide fascinating challenges for at least 30 years to come. So there's a really long career to be had. Secondly, just as Sharmadean said, I think it's what skills do you bring, but it's not just engineers. We need lots of other people to do lots of other jobs in our business. We have hydrologists, we have environmentalists, we have all sorts of people working with us. So the key thing for me is with that variety there, we've got thousands of roles that we want to fill and we need to fill as an industry. Be open-minded, but mainly bring your passion to our industry, and that's what we're really looking for.
Thank you. And Yewande, lastly.
I would say definitely go for it. Creativity is what keeps the engineering and technology industry moving. And it's so important that people, just as Sharmadean said, recognize that it's creativity that helps us bring impact to people's lives, right? So whether you're trying to find a solution, a transport solution that is a lot easier for people, or a greener method of putting a building together, or ensuring that that we move from traditional methods of energy consumption to more sustainable and green energy consumption. All of that is right at the heart of the work that I do. So I would say definitely come join us. There's a journey, but it's centered around making people's lives better and shaping a better world.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I think a couple of you picked up on this idea that it's not just STEM, even though these industries feel like they're STEM oriented. And I was speaking to someone who runs a large AI company not so long ago, and they were talking about needing to hire people with ethics and philosophy backgrounds, because they're trying to think through how do you design a set of rules and frameworks for how we use AI. And actually that's an ethical question in many cases. And the other thing is, it's something that we're very good at in this country, the creative industries. We're not on this panel, but it's one of our great globally competitive industries, creating content. One of the things we've done, and we talked about on another panel, was a film reinsurance scheme that we set up through the pandemic to help film production get up and running again. And that is now protecting tens of thousands of jobs in film sets. So you're right that we should focus not just on STEM, but creative. All right, next question is about sustainability. It's so critical to how we're approaching policy, a transition to net zero, and people are keen to know how your businesses are thinking about that. as they think about the future. Why don't we hear from Jamie, Alistair and Yewande on that question? I think, Jamie, go for it.
Sure. So vertical farming tackles sustainability from, I guess, many different standpoints. So if you look at what we're trying to achieve, it's about bringing food production much closer to end consumers in a much more sustainable way, pushing for zero waste, not using plastics, providing a better alternative to importing products. So obviously there's a positive impact there from a carbon-based standpoint. Fair pricing for products, for produce that's good and healthy and nutritious, that's produced locally. Creating jobs, because new industry equals new jobs, and that's in both rural and urban areas. And overall, as I said at the beginning, highlighting the importance of UK manufacturing. The more that we do here, and the more that we can sell across the world, the better the UK looks.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we've seen it over this crisis, actually, this emphasis on local, because we've had to stay local, but people being far more concerned about the provenance of their food over time is only growing and will continue to grow with the carbon footprint and everything else of those journeys. Alistair, this is bread and butter for you.
Hopefully.
And you talked about the Dogger Bank. That it's extraordinary. Which you've probably told people. I think it's going to power about 1 in 4 of UK homes in the not too distant future. Maybe I've slightly exaggerated, but somewhere in that order of magnitude. And these turbines are quite a sight to behold. But go for it.
Sure. Dogger Bank's a fantastic project, and hopefully the Prime Minister conveyed some of that to you. Certainly seems to have. Look, our vision is to be a leading energy company in a net zero world. Therefore, we don't just want to prepare for a sustainable future. We want to help shape that. You've called out yourself some of the amazing assets that we're involved in building with our teams of people like Dogger Bank. One turn of one turbine there, and there'll be nearly 300 of them will power 2 houses for a day. That's how amazing some of the stats are for those things. I think for us in doing our part, we're not only building assets. We've signed up for the Race to Zero pledge, which is around setting science-based targets for a path to net zero by 2050. We're the first network company in the world that's got science-based targets for its business. And when we think in a broader sense, we signed up to the living wage, 7 or 8 years ago now, and we're a big supporter of that through our supply chain. And then finally, hopefully to please you as well, we're also, we were the first FTSE 100 company to get the fair tax mark. We do believe paying our fair share of taxes and having real transparency about paying taxes and things like that is very, very important as part of a fair transition in the world. So there's a whole bunch of things that I think we can all do.
Yeah, well, you're right. I am happy to hear that, and thank you. And I think it's important with offshore wind in particular. That's an industry that we've created over the last decade in the UK. That again, we are world class at. I think we have the largest offshore wind industry at the moment anywhere in the world, and that's generating all this activity, innovation, and jobs in places like the Northeast and Humberside, which is great to see. Right. Lastly, on this topic, Yewande, you were talking about sustainable buildings, weren't you, earlier?
Yes, I was. And actually, what I would love to do is just bring an industry perspective, right, to probably refer to more of the I guess the broader base in terms of engineering institutions and companies. And engineering companies are really, really getting into, the mindset of leaner, cleaner, and better, right? So, people are ensuring that their companies have strategies, which is really good. I saw a stat recently that said 50% of engineering companies have a strategy, a greener energy strategy in place, a sustainability strategy in place, which is amazing. Also, people are thinking, we really need to get greener technologies into our buildings, into our system of doing things, into our manufacturing processes. We want to take all the people away from site and ensure that we are working in controlled environments using technology like robots to be able to build parts of our building in what I would say, places in spaces that we can actually monitor how much we are consuming. And that is amazing. I'd say there's a bottleneck, and that bottleneck would always be skills and the skills shortage, ensuring that the people that we are putting in place to be able to get us to this incredible place is have the skills that they need, whether it's around energy, water, or even, technology for sustainable manufacturing.
Brilliant. So our next question is about the future, and how is the future evolving for your particular businesses or industries? So why don't we go to Sarah, Anne, and Sharmadean on this? Sarah, obviously a lot of focus on your industry at the moment, but when you think about the next 5 or 10 years, what do you think is going to change? What's coming down the pipe that's exciting to you?
I think one thing that we are seeing, and we're really well placed for here, with an excellent regulatory authority in the UK, the Medicines and Health Regulatory Authority, we are looking at really modernising and introducing more technology, better developments into not only the manufacturing but the testing of vaccines. There's a huge amount of work that goes on in trying to optimise production processes. But whenever we change a product, it needs to be tested and needs to go through clinical development again, because it's then a different product, and you can't just switch your manufacturing to something that's more efficient and then carry on as if you hadn't done anything. But with our regulators, we have a lot of very useful conversations about the best time to make the changes, what other tests would need to be done. And we're also thinking about introducing new technology into the way that we look at the quality of the products that are being produced. So the old-fashioned methods used to involve a lot of animal testing, which was slow and often not particularly informative. We're now using a lot of molecular testing instead. We're using modern methods to find out through molecular biology, through biochemistry, exactly what is in every batch and make sure there's nothing in there that shouldn't be there. It's giving us faster results, it's more informative, as well as cutting out the animal testing. So again, we can't just introduce those and start using it in a product which is going to be used to be put into somebody's arm or sprayed up somebody's nose. We have to have approval, and we have to have a full understanding of the impact of all of those changes on the product, for which we need a really good technologically aware regulator to work with. But fortunately, we have that here. So I expect to see many improvements being brought in using new technologies to have faster, more efficient manufacturing of vaccines, which are not only as safe as the ones that we have now, but have even more information about them before we start to use them in people.
That's brilliant, absolutely fascinating. And on your end, I mean, your industry is changing all the time, but what's the future look like? What's going to happen?
Well, it's very difficult to follow the UK's leading vaccine industry, but I'll try. Banking is now very exciting. Banks are led by innovators, entrepreneurs, people that have STEM degrees. But the bank of the future is going to be very, very different. It's going to be all about data, but data for good, data that helps you with your daily life. It's going to be smarter. It's going to be personalized. It is going to be integrated into day-to-day experiences. I think everybody wants banks to be easier to deal with, to do things that businesses and consumers want. And to do that, following the theme here, it's not just the computer scientists, it's not just the programmers, it's not just the data scientists and the people that are expert in AI. It's also the people who understand behaviors, the psychologists, the people who can design those wonderful apps. Banking has the opportunity to be both practical, secure, but also something that is human. And at Starling, we combine that human aspect, that creative aspect, with something that just works and makes your life easier. And we welcome people from those diverse backgrounds. And Starling is all about diversity. It's all about bringing ideas in and really being relevant to consumers and businesses of today.
Brilliant, thank you, and exciting that we can all look forward to what's happening on these with our banks soon. And then Sharmadean, how about you? I mean, what do you think's changing in your industry? What does the future hold?
So what's been really exciting is over the last year or so, our users, while they came to us for the software, the ability to use our software to sell their services, They actually stayed for all of the information we gave them around how to grow their business and their financial security. So we're really excited because we're actually launching a media arm to sit on top of the marketplace in March on International Women's Day. And that media arm will provide information and education around everything from business, finance, wealth management, productivity, so that all of the women who have treated their businesses almost like a side hustle, you know, like a little project that they were doing, can actually start scaling up their businesses and doing it through content that we create and the commercial aspect. So I think, you know, to follow on with what Anne's saying, I completely agree that having proprietary data around what our users are consuming, from like reading an article, you know, about how to create a pension as a freelancer, to then actually going to a service to do that. I'm really excited about this 360, where we provide women with information and then action to be able to live their highest self.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's interesting because this data thing, on one hand, it's brilliant, right? Because responsible use of data means that we get products or services that are better suited to us. And then the flip side of that is making sure, so on our end, to try and get right is a regulation around people's privacy being protected. And with the explosion of data, that's it's a tricky balance to get right, and one that we have to keep adapting to. As Sarah was saying, the importance of nimble regulation is key. And actually, there's a question that's come in, Sarah, for you and me. Is we're all incredibly proud of the vaccine success that we seem to be experiencing, and in you in particular. But for both of us, what lessons does this hold? Like, what has led to this? What do you take away? I mean, I'll give you my quick thoughts from our perspective. I would completely echo what you said about nimble regulatory systems. And I think when I talk to my colleagues who have been involved with you through this process, I think our regulatory system has proved to be more agile and nimble and much better joined up than others perhaps around the world. That's been a success, but also the public-private partnership that we've had, where government plays its role in trying to fund science and research and help bring things to market, working with professors like yourself and your team. And then ultimately, those need to get commercialized and brought to market by a company with the scale and resources to do it in a responsible way, like AZ. So I mean, that's my quick observations. But what do you, when you reflect on where we've come to, what have been the ingredients of that success?
Well, I definitely agree with you on those successes. But from where I sit, I can see some gaps as well. Gaps that we didn't want to be there, that we've been trying to avoid having for some years, but there hasn't been the investment we would have liked to have into vaccine manufacturing and vaccine testing in the UK, that we've really found it hard to work through that this year, having to set things up at the same time as working through a pandemic and developing a vaccine, having to set up new contracts with manufacturers and teach them new skills that they needed to bring on board immediately and start using. That was very, very challenging. Having achieved that, with working with many partners in the UK who've done a fantastic job, and they have expanded the amount of work that they're doing, I don't want to see that diminish again now. I want to see us build on that, add to it, so that we can in the future be doing even more of this work, because it's so important, and it's been a great success story. We need to make sure that we have the vaccine manufacturing industry supported to do even more in the future.
Yeah, you touched on an interesting theme. I mean, Jamie, you've got some thoughts on this as well, right? Because you're interested in the resilience of our food supply, in a sense, not just from a sustainability perspective, but also just as a good in itself. Sarah talked about resilience on the healthcare side. I mean, how do you think you can build that resilience for us through what you're doing?
I think it's going to take a while. At present, we're importing 40 to 60% of our produce, depending on what you look at. And vertical farming is not really necessarily about producing more food. It's about the quality of the food and the distribution of the food, and obviously where it's located. So as a percentage of the overall market, vertical farming is still probably less than 0.1%. But again, it's also, in relative terms, it's one of the highest growth industries. And the interesting thing is it's not just a standalone industry. It's linked to many different areas. Pharmaceuticals, veganism as a movement, healthy eating, nutrition, research. So it's definitely an industry that's, I'm obviously biased, but it's definitely an industry that's here to stay.
Brilliant. I think we are unbelievably almost out of time. which is a total nightmare. So we've got a few minutes left. So we're going to be really rapid on these last couple and see if we can rattle everyone in. So one quick one that's come in from Graham Webb, who's asking, how can the world of work, in particular science and technology, become more inclusive in the future for my two daughters? So Graham, like me, has two girls. And Anne, you touched on this. So do you want to just give your very quick thoughts on that? And maybe Sharmadean, you would talk about this as well. And then we'll try and wrap up with something that you can all answer. Go on, Anne.
I think the important thing is that leaders of the future, CEOs of the future, look like us. And we have to be role models to people. We have to be out there saying, you can start a business, you can be successful, you can work in STEM. And it's for all of us to embrace this change and actually set examples and be receptive to change in our organizations, to make it easier for people that haven't worked in these industries before to enter these industries.
Excellent. Sharmadean?
And stole my answer. I was going to say the same thing, and it's why I'm really focused on media and content, because unless we start telling more stories of people like Anne and Sarah and Yewande and myself, it will be such a distant, far away goal. And I think actually, it's not just about the CEOs and founders. There are so many incredible women in leadership roles. There's definitely a cult of entrepreneurialism and foundership. But actually, if you're an incredible executive woman, you should also be pushed to the forefront of that storytelling. And I just think we don't see it enough. We don't see it enough in newspapers, in films, in magazines, in plays, etc. So I think from an ideological and cultural sense, we need more women's stories of success being pushed to the forefront.
Brilliant. Well, I'll be definitely showing this whole thing to my two kids later this evening when they've finished their homeschooling for the day. So, right, last couple of minutes, let's wrap around the question that's come in, which is a kind of catch-all question, which all of you have to do very briefly, is two-part, really. What are the misconceptions about your industry, or what do people get wrong about it? And related to that, then, thinking forward, what are the skills that you think the UK needs to develop, that we need to make sure we have in order for you and your organisations and for us as a country to be successful? So big question, not a lot of time. Let's rattle around. Go on then, let's start where Alistair.
Okay, misconceptions. I think people think the industry's boring and staid and there isn't much exciting going on. That's completely wrong. I think we've got one of the most exciting and forward-looking industries around. I hope I said that earlier, and I hope people will come and look at us. Look at our website, look at all the industry websites. There's an amazing amount of things going on. In terms of skills, it's not just engineering. Yes, we need brilliant engineers and we need technology, but we need all sorts of other people as well. And to that point that you raised, we need diverse skills too, diverse skills and talent, getting those stories out there about people who are successful, senior women, senior engineers who are out there working on sites and things like that is really, really important. So I think we need the range of skills and we need a range of people from a range of backgrounds to solve the problems that we have that are actually truly global, a little bit like the current crisis where you want to roll out these vaccines everywhere. We want renewables everywhere.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, let's keep going. Yewande, quick misconceptions and very brief skills that we need.
So I'm just going to echo what Alistair said. There's a big, massive misconception that we are a boring industry, but hey, we're not that boring. Thing as well is we are an industry of creatives, people who want to change the world pretty much. And I keep on seeing this. I've seen this in some of the graduates I've spoken to over the last year. They want to become change makers. They're going to come into our industry and bring that passionate ambition to change the world. In terms of skills, there's a lot of work to be done, but we need people who are interested in digitization. We need people who are interested in hydrogen as a source of energy. We need people who are going to come in and pretty much turn our traditional methods of construction on its head pretty much. And we need people who are passionate about, diversity, right? People from different backgrounds, because they want to serve the different communities that our industry serves. That is a big, massive aspect. So exciting times to come, definitely.
Excellent. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, there's two big misconceptions. I think the first is that vertical farming competes with broadacre farming, a traditional farming, but actually it definitely doesn't. And we in fact work with traditional farms and at helping them to actually improve what they do and implement our types of technology. The second is that it's a more obvious one. People think that if you grow indoors and you're using energy, LED lighting, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It uses a lot of energy, and we should just be using the sun. But actually, vertical farming is evolving very rapidly, and there are really efficient models out there that work. In terms of the skills that we need to improve this sector and continue to evolve it, it's very, very broad, as I said before. So it's creativity and engineering at all levels. People coming through from secondary school all the way through to very experienced engineers, plant science, and also FMCG, people that know how to go out and sell a product and figure out how we can innovate in this area.
Excellent, thank you. Right, last minute, three of you left. Sharmadean.
I'll keep mine really brief. I'd say the biggest misconception is that there are no Black women in technology, in startup scene, and that Black women find it difficult to raise funding. And I actually probably want to say it's not a misconception. They might be correct, but I'm here as proof that it is possible, but I'm very aware I am an anomaly. So I think it's very important that we invest in more women from diverse backgrounds and give them the funding and the capital they need. From a skill set, I would say that you need three things to get into my industry. First is optimism. You have to be hopeful for a different future. The second one is curiosity. You have to be obsessed with asking questions and being like, why? And then the third one is lateral thinking. If you need lateral thinking, you need to be able to look at patterns from all over the world and think, how can I make our future different? So those optimism, curiosity, and lateral thinking.
Brilliant. And your point on diversity is well made. I think both you and Jamie have benefited from our future fund that we set up to get funding to start up innovative companies during the crisis. And I haven't got the stat on the top of my head, but a very large number of the companies that we've ended up providing finance for have multi-ethnic founder teams, which is something that we're delighted to have been able to support. All right, Sarah, then Anne.
So on misconceptions, I think a misconception about vaccine research, development and production is that it's all done in big companies, big pharma, and it's all very secret, and you can only be part of it by being a very small cog in a big machine. But actually, there's an awful lot of research that goes on in universities and in small companies, and we've seen some really creative partnerships between different entities in the last year, really helping to move things forward. So there are lots of different ways you can be involved in this industry. It's not all big pharma. And then on skills, obviously strong background in STEM subjects. But what we're doing is applying our knowledge of STEM subjects. We're not thinking about biology, physics, chemistry and maths every day. We're thinking about being creative. We're thinking about inventing new things, relying on our background. And that's when it gets really exciting, when you know enough about a subject to be able to move it on to the next level and maybe intersect with a different discipline and create something new. So it's creativity on a background of STEM knowledge.
Excellent. And then last word, Anne.
Yeah, fintech is not about a ping pong table. Fintech is all about the finest engineering and also having a very, very forward-looking regulator. We are fortunate in the UK. We have great access to financial skills. We have a regulator that's supporting innovation. And then we have the tech skills. Put those two together and we have an environment where we have profitable, high growth companies that are going to give jobs for the future.
Brilliant. Well, that was a great note to end on. Right. Well, you've all been amazing. Thank you for your time. I know we're going through difficult times at the moment, but I don't think anyone could have listened to this and not be filled with enormous optimism and confidence in our future. Well, we've got people like all of you at the forefront of your industries doing the most amazing things to improve lives for people around the country and create jobs and prosperity in the process. So I'm delighted that you gave up your time. Thank you for that. And thank you for filling us with a well-needed dose of positivity to get through the next few difficult weeks and months. So thanks very much, everyone, for listening. Thank you all for taking part.